Shavua Tov, everyone. Welcome to Tillis Tell Stories for Saturday night, week number 171. The title of this week's video is Shipshape, Boat By. I adapted the story from the book, And the Angels Laughed. Many of you may be familiar with Rabbi Horowitz, the former Bostoner Rebbe, who led two communities in Boston and the Harnov district of Jerusalem. He lived from 1921 to 2009. This story, which he told about his father in the book, And the Angels Laughed, he told in first person, took place before he was born. World War I was raging in Europe, when a worried couple came to see Rabbi Pinchas, Dovid, HaLevi, Horowitz, the first Bostoner Rebbe in Boston's North End. They told him their son had received a draft notice, and since many Americans were being shipped to the war in Europe, they feared for his life. The Rebbe listened attentively and then asked them only one question. Do you keep Shabbat? No, they said. We simply can't. The business is America. It's just impossible. I'll make a deal with you, the Rebbe said. You commit to keep Shabbat 100%, and I'll promise you that your son will never go off to the battlefield. They hemmed, they hawed, they talked it over, and finally took the plunge. They gave the Rebbe their solemn promise, and they left. They indeed kept Shabbat conscientiously after that, but the U.S. Army kept doing its thing. Their son soon received a notice to appear at the designated time and place for his physical examination. His parents panicked and ran back to the Rebbe. He calmed them by saying simply, I promised he will not go to Europe, and he won't. However, their son passed his physical in fine form and soon had another letter. Greetings, the famous draft letter from the draft board. He was to appear at a specific time and place to be inducted into the army and pick up his uniform. The parents ran back to the Rebbe and look, we're keeping Shabbat. But all the Rebbe would say was, I promised you, and a promise is a promise. Another letter, another visit to the Rebbe, a promise is a promise, and off their son went for basic training. And so it went. Finally, one last letter. Their son was to appear in 2 weeks' time to board a ship with his company, destination Europe. Again, the parents ran to the Rebbe, and again they received this promise. But the days ticked slowly by with no deliverance in sight. No last-minute messenger came. The parents paid the Rebbe several more visits, the last one on the very day their son was to set sail. But the Rebbe refused to get excited. He merely asked, are you still keeping Shabbat? And when they said yes, he calmly reiterated, I promised. On the last day, the hours ticked by, but nothing happened. They left the house for the dock. Still nothing happened. They said their tearful farewells. Nothing happened. Then their son, with all his shipmates, ascended the gangplank to the top of the ship. As he reached the top, he turned to wave one last sad farewell. And that was it. End of story. Well, not quite. The next soldier in line, not expecting the sudden turn, accidentally pushed the man who was waving, their son. While falling, he caught his foot in a hole in the deck. There was a small commotion at the top of the gangplank, and our friend was soon slowly carried back down. It turned out he had twisted his ankle, and it was quite a bad sprain, one that could take weeks to heal. The young soldier-to-be quite literally missed the boat. A few weeks in an army hospital and did wonders, and the young man was soon up and about. He was eventually signed to a new unit, but he never did see combat in Europe or anywhere else. To the Rebbe, it was an example of the power of keeping Shabbat, but his Hasidim saw it as a clear example of Tzaddik Gozer v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Mikayem. A Tzaddik decrees and God fulfills. After all, a promise is a promise. This story relates to the Torah reading of Shoftim, which discusses being drafted for war and who is exempt. It's in chapter 20 in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, verses 1 to 9. Shavua Tov and Shana Tova, may you and yours be blessed for the upcoming, only 5 weeks, Jewish New Year 5784. May you be blessed with happiness, health, prosperity, and spiritual growth. Shavua Tov.